Gemara from now to sort of the end of the parak are laws of kashrus, which to become a rav and get smicha, you have to learn quite a few of these things. So, quick introduction here. We have the concept of bittul. Something treif falls into something kosher. We say that obviously you're not allowed to eat it, but if the kosher is a sufficient amount that it nullifies the iser, it becomes mutter. You're not allowed to do lechatchila. We have a concept called ein mevatlin iser lechatchila. You can't go ahead and do it, but once you did it, it is mutter, depending on the quantity. So generally, we say that there's a machlekes regarding min b'mini. It goes as follows: min b'she'ena mina, which means if you have two products, let's say milk and meat. So milk is one and meat is another one. If there is shishim in the meat, if there's a sufficient amount of meat that completely eclipses the flavor of the milk, so you don't feel it at all, it's not there, then we say it is bottle. So it used to be. So it used to be that if you cannot taste it, you can give it to a goy. If the goy is not aware that you're actually relying on him, he's just talking to you stam, and he says, look, I can no longer taste it, then maybe if it's 30, 40 times, it's a multiple, it's sufficient. But obviously, we had to put on some kind of a rule. So we said shishin, that if 60 times as much when it comes to kosher. When it comes to truma, we say 101 times. And sometimes we say that it's never bottled. If it's there as a catalyst, if it's there to, let's say, like rennet and cheese, if there even, or let's say seasoning, that it's there, you feel it, even if there's a multiple of 1,000 times, you still feel the flavor of that Issa, then it's a problem. Okay, that's called min b'she'enei minoi. Then you have min b'minoi. If you have two, you have kosher meat and treifa meat, same meat, but one of them is treif. That's called min b'minoi. And the flavors get all mixed up and everything else. Min b'minoi, we have a machlekes tanoim, Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. According to the Chachamim, that min b'minoi, in fact, is easier to be bottled. We say that it's bottled chad betray, it's bottled b'roi ma'atoyre, it's only the rabbanon that answer it, and it's bottled b'shishim. No difference. And there's another view that Rabbi Yehuda that says, no, min b'minoi, afilu be'elef le bottle, because they don't nullify each other, they reinforce each other. So therefore, the treif is always there. In the Rishonim, in Amoraim, there's a machlekes how we paskin, and in the Rishonim there's a machlekes how we paskin. Rashi and Tais and others. So that's the Isser. And then we sort of go further and break it down further. When we say that the taste is there, and therefore it's Asr, and generally we say that it's Batal B'Shishim, is it the taste? What decides what's min b'minei, what's min b'she'eni minei? Does it have to have the same flavor that makes it min b'minei, or they both have to be called by the same name? That's what makes it. Is it the name, or is it the tam? And then within tam itself, is it the taste of the substance, or is it the fragrance? What is the iser? Okay, with that introduction, we will now understand the Gemara. So the Gemara starts off. You have chamra atika, old wine. So this is strong wine, and then gets mixed up. And this chamra atika, for example, is yayin. Actually, machlekes rishonim, if we're talking here about yayin nesach, or even stam yainam. Yayin nesach and chametz and pesach are the two exceptions. That even a mashahu, it's still asses. It's still asses. and those are two ones that we have. Those are two that we have strict. That a mashu is asser. So what happens if you have chamra atika, you have old wine, either yain, and there's a machlekes rabbeinu tam and other rishonim, whether stam yainam, do we also say that it's asher mashu, or is it only if it's real yayin nesach? Only then is it asher mashu? So now the Gemara says, chamra atika, you have old wine with a strong wine that tastes like wine, and this is yayin nesach, and it got mixed up with inve, with grapes. So the divrei hakol, everyone agrees that in this case here we do noised tam. This is a case of min b'she'ena minoi, different names, different flavors, different tastes, and therefore the general rule is that if it's bottled b'shishim, it's bottled b'shishim.
Didn't we have a Mishnah a couple of day or two ago that wine that's poured on grapes, you just wash it off?
Yeah, it was cold, but here we're talking about that the flavor of the wine actually went in the grapes. We said there are crack slits in the grapes,
Right.
remember?
Right.
And the
Yeah.
wine goes in. So we're saying now we're talking about a case where the wine gives flavor to the grapes.
Oh,
If it
okay.
did give flavor to the grapes, then it is bottle b'shishim. What about well, yeah. So Dibra Hakal, everyone agrees, but nice attack. If you feel the flavor, you don't feel the flavor. Chamra chadata. You have fresh wine, which means it's just squeezed. It's not really wine yet. But anyway, with grapes. So the tastes are very similar. Abaye says, well, in this case over here, is b'mashu. This case over here is it's a mashu. Why? Because this is like min b'minoi. This is the same. Why? Because it's the same taste. We go after the time, the taste, the same taste, min b'minoi. And Abaye and Rava both hold, like the opinion that says that min b'minoi afilu be'elef like bottle. And the reason is because they don't nullify each other, they reinforce each other. And Rava says, no, but nice and tam. Rava says that in this case here, I don't consider it min b'minoi, I'll consider it min b'she'ena minoi. And why is that? Because they have two different names. This is called wine, and this is called grapes. So Abaye said the mashu, because both of time was going to focus on the flavor and the taste. They both have the same taste. To have a min b'minoi. This is a classical case of min b'minoi, min b'minoi b'mashu, and a min b'minoi. They paskin Abaye Rav paskin. It's a mashu. The Rava says the noisen tam. No, we follow the laws of shishu. Why? Because Basa Shmazlina, we look at the name, and each one has their own name. This is wine and this is grape. Now, we mean b'she'ena minoi, and the rule is that mean b'she'ena minoi b'nois tam. If it's b'she'ena minoi, then it's nois and tam. Says the Gemara Tanam, we learned in our Mishnah, and this is what you just raised before, Yayin Nesach Shenafal Gabi Anavim, that if Yayin Nesach fell on top of grapes, all you have to do is you have to rinse it off. Now, L'chayde, Kesal Kedatar, we thought right now that we're probably talking about Chamra Chadata, we're talking about new wine, the Inve in grapes. And so L'chayde, when it says over here that, what do you call it? And the Mishnah says, if you remember, the Mishnah says, if it gives a tam into the grapes, then it's awesome. So the Gemara is making two assumptions here. First of all, the Gemara making an assumption we're talking about new wine, and we're making an assumption that asa does not mean that it's asa completely, like it's asa b'mashu. Asa means a standard iser, which is only shishim. And therefore, we ask a question on Abaye. It says very excited that right now we thought my love. What is it? Even though it's the same flavor, it's according to Abaye, it should be also b'mashahu, but according to Rava, we say it's considered min b'she'ena min because this is called wine and this is called grapes. So l'chayda, when the Mishnah says that it's also because it gives it flavor, it means shishim, like flavor. My love ben noisatam. So Gemara says, no, defending Abaye, he says, no, Masha, who told you that when it says that it's usher, it means that it's usher until you have a multiple of 60. Maybe it means usher completely, regardless. So what it can be, because then the Mishnah then summarizes it all up and gives you a rule. The Tani Sefer, the Mishnah concludes, this is the rule. If it adds positive flavor, then it's usher. If it doesn't give any positive, in other words, it's nice and tam little gam, it actually ruins it, then mutter it is permitted. So l'chayda is as clearly here we're talking about how usher is it as long as it's giving flavor. The moment that's no giving any, the moment it's not giving any more flavor, it's not usher anymore. So it's clearly here we're talking about bottle b'shishim, and we're talking about new wine, and we're talking about new wine. New wine is we see here what that even though the names that all we care about is the names, and therefore it's two different names, wine, grapes, and it's considered min b'she'ena min. And the question on Abaye says we don't focus on the name, we focus on the taste. Abaye will answer you back. Who told you we're talking about new wine? Masnisin, our Mishnah is bechamra atika beinve. We're talking about old wine. So therefore the taste is very different. And that's why it's batul b'shishim. Yeah, says the Gemara further. Yeah, says the Gemara. The next piece.
What's the article page reference?
Anyone?
66A2.
Thank you. Harvey, did you get that? 66A2.
Yep, thank you very much.
Okay. Says the Gemara further. The chol. Now the next case. The chol, the shikra.
The chamra.
Sorry. What am I talking? The challah, the shikra, and the chamira, the chite. Did I skip a little? I skipped something.
Yeah, chola the chamra, the chola the
Oh, sorry, I skipped
shikara.
something. Sorry. So by chamra tika beinve, says the Gemara. What about challah, the chamra, the challah, the shikra? You have two kinds of vinegar. One is a wine vinegar, and one is a beer vinegar. So they're both vinegar, but they have two different tastes. And chamira de chita and the chamira de sari. Or for example, you have chametz or leavened bread of wheat and barley. You have two different kinds. They both are called chamira, but they're two different flavors. Abaye says now l'chayr Abaye says b'nei satam. You look at the taste, basatay mazlinen, and the high time l'chud, even though they have the same name, they're both let's say vinegar. But nevertheless, they taste. This is wine vinegar. This is beer vinegar. Very different tastes. And according to Abaye, you follow the taste, and therefore it's considered min b'she'enoi minoi, and therefore it's bottle b'shishi. Rava says no. This is the reverse of before, but the principle is the same. Rava says you look at the names. Since they're both vinegar, Rava says, and both vinegar min bin minoi and min bin minoi fill about the bottle. Rava mashu basa shmoli. That's the name. The high cholamikra, the high cholamikra. They're both called vinegar, so they have the same name. Therefore, it's considered min bin minoi, and if it has the same name, I fill it elef le bottle. The high chamira mikra, the high chamira mikra. They're both called leavened bread. The havli min bin minoi mashu. So it's the same argument, but the outcomes are exactly the opposite of what we learned at the top of the page. Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye says, but I'm meaning a lot of time. How do I know that the main focus should be the taste? If the taste is the same, I don't care about the names. It's considered min b'minoi. And the taste is different. I don't care. The names are the same. It's min b'shein minoi. And in the Tanya we learned tavlin. If you have spices, beis v'gimel shemes. Let's say you have spices. 2 or 3 different names, but behemin echad, they're the same species. And Rashi says, for example, you have peppercorns. You can have long peppercorns, black ones, white ones, but they're all pepper. They're all pepper. And so therefore they're one min, but they have different names. Oy min gimel, or you can have another case where you have 3 different minim. Asurin, they are all asur. Umitztarfen, and they combine. Chizkiah says, so the first case is you have 3 spices, the same species, but 3 different names. This is called long pepper, short pepper, and white. That's how Rashi learns. Tosfos doesn't like this chart at all. Or you have 3 different species, 3 different kinds of food, and they all combine. Chizkiah says that why do they all combine? The reason why they all combine is because they all have the same flavor. They're all trying to sweeten the food. So now that's what Chizkiah said. Let's understand. Do we look at the names or do we look at the taste? If you learn the way I learned that the main thing is the taste, then kula chataimu. All 3, the 3 different kinds of seasoning, but nevertheless they all taste the same. They all make the food sweeter. And that's enough to say it tastes the same. So therefore, it makes sense. And if you can tell me that you go after the name, they all have different names. Is Hai Shmolachud, V'Hai Shmolachud. Each one has a different name. So they're all different from each other.
What's the svara to go after the name in the first place?
We'll soon see
It
what
seems
Rava
very
says.
strange. Tam you can understand, but a name, like you remember the Gemara sometimes says B'marava it was called this, and in Bovel it was called that. What do you do in such,
Okay. Good question, because the idea is that the Issa, the Torah puts an Issa on each different thing. So no, the Bryce says here that we can combine 3 different Isurim and make them as one. But each one, let's say, has not enough of a shir, not a kazayis. You combine all 3 and make it a kazayis. So Rabbi says, Abai says, how do you combine all 3? The 3 different Averis. The reason why you combine them is because they all have the same taste. And therefore, it's like one Avera. Even though each food item is different, it's like one Avera. But you, Rava, who say that it's how do you define something by the name that it's given? Then the 3 different averis, and if each one doesn't have enough to hold you liable, how do you combine the 3 together? That's a Abaye's raya that you look at taste. Comes along Rava and he says that your question is, or your basis is this brisa.
He's talking about spices and things. What's the? Is it like?
It could be Orla, it could be a Klai Kerem, it could be any Yisr. The first 3 years something grows, it could be any Yisr. And Rava will tell you, I agree that the Brisa definitely says that you can combine different spices, but your raya from here to say that it's because the taste is the same is no raya. You know why? Because this is another opinion, nothing to do with our machlekes. In fact, Hamani Rameiri, this follows view Rameir. What does Rameir say? Rameir holds that even disparate averis can be combined as one. And I don't care if the tastes are the same or the tastes are not the same. I don't care if the names are the same or not. Any averis can be joined together. How do I know that any Eastern toilets are eating? All different kinds of food that you eat, you can combine them and join them together as one Aveda. Shenema, because it says in the pasuk, Lo Yiseichel, you should not eat kol te'eva. It says in the pasuk, you should not eat kol te'eva. Just read in the Torah. It says Lo Yiseichel, you should not eat kol te'eva. What make every abomination? Kol sheta'aftilach harehu bal teichel. Everything that I told you not to eat is comes under the same avera of bal teichel. So you can combine them all together. So even though the names are different and the tastes are different, it's irrelevant. This is Rameir. Combine them all together. Okay, next case. Again, we'll continue the machlekes Abai Rava. We'll go to the next case. Cholol l'goy chamra. Now, what happens if, let's say, you have vinegar that's osir, and you pour it into wine of heter? So how much do you? What's the din there if they mix together? So we say that what is it? If vinegar falls into wine, everyone agrees, everyone agrees they have a different taste. Vinegar and wine taste differently, different names. So the din is you go after shishin. No argument between Rav and Abaye. Everyone agrees the same thing. However, if wine falls into vinegar. Now, what happens is when wine falls into, let's say, a barrel with this vinegar inside the barrel, as the wine is falling in the barrel, the vinegar has a very strong fragrance, very strong smell. So the wine, as it's falling into the barrel, before it reaches the vinegar itself, already the wine smells like vinegar. You don't smell wine anymore. All you smell is vinegar. But the wine itself still tastes like wine until it lands into the vinegar, and then the vinegar obviously takes over and becomes the dominant taste that you have there. So what happens here is Abaye says in this case here is mashu. That this case here is a mashu. Why is it a mashu? Because I call it min b'minoi. And why do I call it min b'minoi? Because the reyach of the wine is already like vinegar. So they're both. I mean, Abaye says within taste, it's the reyach that's the most important, and therefore the reyach of the wine and the reyach of the vinegar are the same. So it's a mashu. Rava says no, but nice tam. Rava says it's not the reyach, it's the tam that we look at, and the 2 different timing, 2 different names. Even though when it's falling through the air, it already has the smell of vinegar. So what? It hasn't yet become vinegar until it lands in the wine. And therefore it's nice and tam. It's two different things. Abaye Mashu, he says, why is a Mashu Gerecha Chola? It smells like vinegar, v'taima chamra, and it tastes like wine. And the din is when you have such a situation, Chola, it has a status like vinegar, but it's not only over here, by the way. We had more about Basra. The same thing applies to a bracha whether you make a shahakol or ber pergofen. The same argument there. If it tastes like wine but it smells like vinegar, do you make a shahakol or do you make a ber pergofen? Abaye says it's considered chol, it's considered vinegar, a shahakol. You cannot use it for kiddush because it's considered vinegar. And Rava says no, that we don't care about the reach, we ignore the reach. It's the main thing is the tam, the taste, and therefore you make a ber pergofen, you make a kiddush, and so too over here. It's wine, and because it's wine and it's landing in the vinegar, it's min b'she'ena mini and it's bokel b'shish. Now, that's Abaye's opinion, and Rabbi says b'nois tam reicha chala. What about, let's say, okay, b'nois tam? Why? Because it's considered wine until it actually falls into the vinegar itself. What about reicha chola? If it smells like vinegar, but so Rava says because reicha chola, the time of chamra, if it smells like vinegar and tastes like wine, chamra, it has a status like wine, and therefore v'havli mean b'sheini min. It's wine and vinegar mixed together. The whole min b'sheini min and b'neisatam. Every min b'sheini min is neisatam. Next case says the Gemara. Another machlekes between Abaye and Rava. Hai bastia. Bastia means if you puncture a hole in the lid of a barrel, you want to know whether the wine is still good or whether the wine is off, so you smell it. But there's a lid there that's sealed, and they didn't want to really remove the whole lid. So what they do is they didn't want to, so they make puncture a hole there, and they get someone to smell it and tell you whether the wine is still good or it's not good anymore. So now why is it called a bastia? I just told you it's Rashi's pshat, and all the Rishonim don't like it because then why would it be a bastia? A bas is like the second generation. This is just a puncture and you smell it. So they say you actually many Rishonim hold you put a straw inside the barrel, and the way Rabbeinu Chanan learns, so what happened is you have a straw, you put it in the barrel, then this straw above the barrel has a little exit where the wine that you're going to draw some wine up. You don't want to drink the wine, you want to smell it, but it's too far away. So you draw the wine up through the straw, and then somewhere above the lid, the wine all passes through that other extension that you have over there. So no wine goes up to the person, they just want to smell it. So that's a bastia. It doesn't, you made a thing, you put a straw in, and then it goes out through this other channel, the other channel. So what's the story? Hi bastia. If a guy wants to smell Yiddish wine, shapadami. He's not drinking any wine. There's no yayin nesach stam yayin. He doesn't come in contact with the wine. All he's doing is smelling the wine. Or the Yisrael eat with a guy's wine is a problem because if it smells nice, you're having Isser Hana. You're not having any pleasure. So what happens? So Abaye says, Abaye says it's forbidden for a Yid to smell the wine. Rava says mutter. Why does Abaye say Asa? Abaye says Reicha Milsi, because Abaye holds that fragrance is also something, and therefore you're smelling Yayin Esech, so it's Asa. And Rava says Mutter Reicha La Milsi. Rava says it's only tasting it, smelling is nothing, and therefore it's not a problem whatsoever. Omar Rava says Rava, how do I know that Reicha means nothing? It's not because we learned in a Mishnah. Tanur, an oven, shihisiku, you heated up the oven with wood, bikumen shel truma, with cumin of truma. So now the way you make it is you have the wood, and the wood burns through, and then the wood turns into coal, and then you put your bread in there. You don't put the bread in while the fire is a big fire; they're going to burn your entire bread. But so therefore, the cumin sort of is no longer there anymore, but you're having the smell of cumin that's in the coal, smell like cumin, is now entering the bread. You want the flavor in your bread. It turns out to be that this cumin, let's say, is truma. And even though truma, you're allowed to have hana from it, you're not allowed to eat it. So Tano Shesika became truma, but often by then you bake bread, hapas muteris. Why the pas muter? Because the she'ain tama kimin el recha, there's no real kimin there because the wood all burnt through and through. And now all you have is coal. What do you have left? You have the flavor of the cumin, and the flavor of the cumin is not a problem. So it's a clear raya to Rava that reicha la milsi. Says Abaye, not so simple. Abaye will say, when do I say that reich means something? If the substance that's generating that reich is there, then I say that the reich is the primary thing. But if the substance is no longer in existence, all you have is reich, that it's wafting its way through, that's nothing. So Abaye says, Shani Hasan, the Mikli Isuda, remember the wood, the wood, the cumin tree, the wood is all gone. It all turned into coal, no longer in existence. All you have left is reich. I agree that if all you have is reich, lav milsi. So Amar Amori comes along Amori, he says, I think that the argument of Abaye and Rava, whether reich milsi or not, is actually machlekes tanaim. It says there, if somebody takes down from the oven, removes from the oven hot bread, there was a barrel of wine at truma, and he places the bread right above the barrel. Is Rameya says, Rameya says that Yisrael cannot eat that truma because that bread, because the bread now is considered like truma. Why is the bread truma? The bread did not touch the wine. There's no wine that entered the bread. It's truma because the reach of the wine entered the bread. Clearly, like Abaye, that reicha milsi. Where Rabbi Yehuda says it's mutter. It seems Rabbi Yehuda, Rava follows Rabbi Yehuda. That reach is nothing. And Rabbi Yesi says, Mate b'shal chitin v'oisa b'shal saivim. Rabbi Yesi says that wheat is no problem because it doesn't really absorb. But barley bread is also because it will absorb the wine. So what do we see here? A machlekes tanoim, whether reach, now we're talking about absorbing is the reich, whether reich is considered something substantial or not. Because only barley draws in that smell. My laba hakamil, that's the argument. Rameir holds that reich is milson, that's why placing the bread on the barrel is a problem. Or reich is nothing. Says the Gemara, L'Rava, there's no question. Rava who says that reich is nothing, we ignore it. And Meir says that the bread above the barrel is a problem. Obviously, and it's truma, Rava can't agree with Rameir. But Abaye can argue that everyone agrees with me. Rameir, a given. But even Rabbi Yehuda might agree with me. Why? Me, Lema Tanoy, Abaye will say, Lav, me, Itmar Allah. Didn't we learn in commentary on this brisa that the brisa is talking about something else? Omar Rabbi Rish Lakish. Rabbi said the name of Rish Lakish. That when exactly are they arguing? He learns the brisa very differently. So Abaye therefore says, I can agree with everybody. And this is how Rish Lakish understood the brisa. He said, we assume that the lid was off, been removed, and the bread was sitting there somehow, a big loaf of bread, so it's straddling both ends of the barrel, and the wine is not in contact with the bread. You just have the fragrance of the wine, and the question is it of truma whether it causes a problem to the bread or not. However, the Rish Lakish said that's not the case. Possibly the lid was covered, and the bread itself. Is the bread hot, then the bread absorbs. If the bread is cold, it doesn't really absorb anything. So there's four possibilities there. That the bread is hot and there's a lid on it. Bread is hot, there's no lid on it. The bread is cold, there's a lid on it. Bread is cold, there's no lid on it. And what's going on here? So he says, sometimes everyone agrees the halacha will be the same, and sometimes they don't. And it goes as follows. The hot bread, the chavis psucha, and the barrel is open. The divrei hakel, everyone agrees asura. Everyone agrees that it's asur because it will absorb the reich. So Abaye says, you see, the way the Shlakish learns, everyone agrees that the reich milsi, that the smell actually is significant. On the other hand, the past trinena, so the bread is cold. The chavis maguf and the lid is sealed on it. Divrei hakel muteres. Everyone agrees that it's muter because nothing passes through. Not a problem. They're arguing in the Metzias the following. Everyone agrees that Reicha Milsi. The question is, somebody's making over here some noise there.
Harvey, can you unmute your microphone? Harvey, can you put your microphone on mute?
So the Shlok is Abaye saying, you see, the Shlok is saying everyone agrees that the Reicha is significant. But the argument is as follows. They're arguing the pas chama, hot bread, the chavis megufa, but the lid is on, it's sealed. Does the lid prevent any of the flavor going through? Well, some flavor does go through, but is that enough to render the bread truma or not, or the patzin and cold bread of the lid is open, it's sitting above, and that's the machlekes. And Abaye therefore says the hadidi. In my case here, when you puncture a hole in the barrel, is kipas chama is no different than a hot bread with chavit an open lid, because you're directly, there's a hole there, and the reach comes right up, and if you're a yid smelling goyish wine yain nesach, you're having hana from yain nesach. It is no different than open bread, hot bread on an open barrel, and therefore it's also so. But according to Abaye, everyone in that brayso will agree that Reichem Milsi. That's the Abaye.